As it turns out, thieves have hit
Welcome to more Metal Mayhem on VH1.
They were cowboys from hell who lassoed the metal world by the throat.
That was really extreme metal before people called it extreme metal.
There wasn't anybody out there that could touch us.
We wanted to terrify people.
Pantera bludgeoned concert crowds, and led by guitarist Dimebag Daryl Abbott, partied even harder than they played.
Just to play the guitar, you have to get a couple cocktails in them.
It was out of control.
The only band that I've ever known that if you didn't drink, you'd get fired.
Pantera's brutal brand of metal forged a brotherhood. But by the mid-90s, singer Philip Anselmo's heroin addiction began to blow it all apart.
I saw him laying on the ground blue and people hitting on him and all this.
I thought I could do anything and there wasn't a damn thing that could beat me. I was wrong. I was wrong.
Then, in a single terrifying moment, it all came to a stunning end with the horrific onstage murder of guitarist Dimebag Daryl Abbott.
Stop, please. Stop shooting. You're killing all my friends.
It's like a cannon blast.
Now, put the pedal to the metal with Pantera.
We were a machine.
This is the story behind the music.
Don't underestimate the kid. You're crazy if you do. And I am the kid.
Come on, buddy. Thank you, fella. Step on back.
It's December 8th, 2004, and ex-Pantera guitarist Dimebag Daryl Abbott takes the stage at a nightclub in Columbus, Ohio, with his new band, Damage Plan.
It's just another night. We do the sound check. Everything's rock ready for the show. You know, we're ready.
Then he got on the kit, he walked around the corner and fired off into the song.
At first, it seems like any other gig, but the 24th anniversary of John Lennon's murder is about to become another of the darkest days in rock history.
We couldn't have been more than 10 seconds into the first song.
When I looked up, I saw the guy coming across the stage. The first thought that came to my mind is that he was a cop. He wasn't in full throttle run. He was just marching in. He was on a mission, and I saw him raise his hands up.
I had my back turned with the amps behind me, and I heard the noise.
Revolutionary riffs turned Dimebag into a heavy metal messiah. But his musical odyssey commenced nearly 3 decades earlier, when 11-year-old Daryl Abbott became a foot soldier in the KISS Army. He enlisted with his neighbor, Rita Haney, who years later became his girlfriend.
I mean, my first concert was KISS, his was too. I remember he almost cried because he missed Gene Simmons breathing fire because some old lady in the back behind us was all stoned and put her cigarette out in his hair.
KISS's Sonic Circus inspired Daryl to pick up an instrument of his own. On his 12th birthday, he got his first guitar.
The next thing I know, Daryl's standing in his room, got his guitar strapped on in a KISS outfit. Got his face all done up like he's Frehley in the whole 9 yards. You know.
Once he started playing, he was completely obsessed with the guitar. Took it to the bathroom with him.
As Daryl practiced power chords, his older brother Vinnie Paul bashed away on the drums. And in 1981, while still in their mid-teens, the siblings formed Pantera. The band's lineup was rounded out by bassist Rex Brown and vocalist Terry Glaze.
We started immediately jamming at Vince and Daryl's house out in the garage.
I got in the band, they said, you gotta wear spandex. I said, no way. But I eventually put on some freaking spandex.
There was wild stuff that went on in that house. Lots of...
Lead singer Terry Glaze's glam rock style didn't mesh with the band's new sonic philosophy and was fired, replaced by 19-year-old New Orleans native Philip Anselmo.
It was harder, it was edgier, it was walking more with swagger, you know?
They knew And I knew right off the bat, the first time we had ever jammed, I had never played with a band this tight. I mean, these guys were stunning, you know. It was like, my God, you know, this is unbelievable.
He came down and we did a jam session together, and it was just like it all.
Guys come on stage and they start spinning their hair. Like, oh boy, what are we in for here? But then Daryl just launches into one of his riffs, and then Phil opens that mouth of his, and this just roar comes out that just is overpowering from the get-go.
But Ross left the gig just 20 minutes into their set.
I think I turned around to Vince and go, he split. You know, we'd had everybody come out and see us at a certain point. We were just like, so we got ripped.
All of a sudden, they start throwing birthday cake, and we start slamming drinks, and Diamond Rex are sliding around on the dance floor.
I mean, you couldn't even step on that floor without busting your ass.
As soon as we get done, the dude comes over to me, and he goes, man, that was one of the most incredible live bands I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, well, dude, how come you left about 30 songs into it?
I told him that, you know, I went to call my boss and say this was just unbelievable. We got to sign these guys immediately.
In the winter of '89, Pantera roared into the studio to record their major label debut. Released in July of '90, Cowboys from Hell served as a ferocious sonic blueprint.
You know, it was a whole new animal. Unbelievably powerful, it was undeniable, it was fierce as hell.
I was like, holy, you know, like, how did they do that? You know, how'd they go from here to here?
In the fall of '90, Pantera snagged the opening slot on a national tour alongside Suicidal Tendencies and Exodus. Though virtually unknown, the Metal Cowboys won over hardcore audiences with relentlessly intense performances.
We called that the Kill or Be Killed tour, and we went out and killed.
That was really extreme metal before people called it extreme metal.
We wanted to terrify people, you know.
Pantera slayed crowds across America and gave their touring RV a thorough beating in the process.
Bucket of bolts, 10 swinging on this thing, and it'd break down just every other night. The septic tank would fall out and everywhere. So, a lot of fun.
Everywhere we went, we just barely made it from gig to gig. I actually drove the RV on that tour with Suicidal from Chicago to Minneapolis with no headlights.
And we got no headlights, and I'm like laying on the floor, like passing out, and he's like, oh, that car's coming, so I gotta reach down in there and put the wires back down to make the headlights work, and until they go by, and they're like, okay, and he's just driving, you know, by the moonlight, you know, and it's like, the car's coming up, lights, headlights, okay, okay.
At the end of the 6 weeks or however long that tour was, every single thing on this motorhome was broken. Everything. It was insane.
We went up dropping that thing off in the middle of the night at the RV place we rented it from. Popped in the car, we drove off. Here's your RV back. Later.
After Cowboys from Hell, Pantera were poised to reach the heavy metal pantheon. But the rock-solid band would soon find itself on shaky ground. Next, Dimebag Darrell's 100-proof prescription for pain relief.
I was like, how you feeling, brother? He was just like, not too good, bro. It's just like just to play the guitar. You have to get a couple cocktails in them.
When Behind the Music continues.
Keep watching.
Uncle Bel's got him. If it's not fourth meal, it's just food. By
1991, Pantera had positioned themselves at the sharp tip of metal's cutting edge. They returned to the studio late that year to record Vulgar Display of Power with one ambitious objective: to obliterate the boundaries of heavy rock.
We were so possessed, really, and focused on what we wanted to do.
There wasn't anybody out there that could touch us. We kept getting, you know, heavier and heavier and tighter and tighter.
It was exciting to hear that they took it that far, that they took it that direction. and just went deeper and darker.
The album's intensity was matched in the mosh pits of Pantera's increasingly brutal stage shows.
I guess not everybody that goes to a rock show or a heavy metal show is going there to get their nose broken. You know, a lot of people want to watch. And I wouldn't allow it if I didn't get what I was demanding out of an audience. I guess I became furious.
I want to see you lose your mind. I want to see you get some after everybody.
If you're a parent, you totally don't want your kids going to a Pantera show. Either because they're going to come back with a bloody nose and black eyes, or just because they're going to come back so hopped up, you're not going to want to deal with them.
It's just an unstoppable wrecking ball. It was definitely beyond awesome.
Pantera's power grooves pummeled audiences, but the hard-partying band took their best shots backstage, where booze was chugged like water.
We would joke with people. They would say, how'd you get the opening slot? And we're like, well, you got to sign a contract that says you will drink with Pantera every night, otherwise you're thrown off the tour. People are like, really? I'm like, yeah, really.
How's it going, man? The only band that I've ever known that if you didn't drink, you'd get fired.
They went through unbelievable amounts of liquor backstage. I had to see the bill, so I was always shocked more than anybody else, I think.
It's like a gigantic toga party at all times, you know what I mean? If you're having a crap day and you go backstage at a Pantera show, you're going to have a good time.
And smile, it's Blacktooth Grin.
The band called their favorite cocktail the Blacktooth Grin, a name taken from a lyric to the Megadeth song Sweating Bullets.
Blacktooth was the drink of choice. The Crown splash of Coke, Seagram 7 splash of Coke.
Good.
And there were thousands flowing before and after and during the shows.
We burned many a brain cell together on the Blacktooth Grin.
Blacktooth Grin.
All of Pantera binged on the bottle, but no one guzzled with more gusto than Dimebag Darrell.
I was like, how you feeling, brother? And he was just like, not too good, bro. It's just like just to play the guitar. You have to get a couple cocktails in them, but you'd always get out there and whoop ass, you know.
Couldn't even say his name, but just get up on stage and just wail on guitar. The nights that you thought he was going to be absolute shambles on stage were probably some of his most brilliant performances.
Dimebag made sure each killer gig was capped by unique forms of alcohol-soaked amusement.
Don would come up with all kinds of crazy. We'd be in the middle of bum, and he'd come up with some crazy-ass game to play, or, you know, just to break up the monotony. And that's the kind of cat he was.
One time we had hung all these, like, Hustler fold-outs and stuff on the wall, and he had bought this thing of green slime. We'd throw them, and if you hit the face or something like that, that wasn't good enough. You know, that's a shot of whiskey. If you hit a or something, or if you hit it smack dab on the crotch region of the young lady in the photo, I think you probably still had to do a shot of whiskey.
We had one of those breathalyzers on the road. Dime brought it in from somewhere, and so everybody would, you know, see how drunk you are. Oh, dude, you're not nearly drunk enough, you know? Pour him another shot.
By 1994, heavy metal had been declared all but dead in the wake of the grunge revolution. But Pantera was prepared to strike back with a vengeance, and they entered the studio to record their next album, Far Beyond Driven.
I remember one of the main thoughts going into that record was we have to be heavier than Vulgar. This has to be a heavier record. And I was thinking to myself, how is that possible? You know, how do we do that?
Each record we wanted to outdo the next record.
And we just said, we're going to make the most balls-out, kick-ass record we can make.
Far Beyond Driven was released on March 22nd, 1994. Without significant radio or MTV play, it debuted at #1 on the Billboard charts.
That was the most abrasive record I could ever imagine, and it went and blew up the charts at #1 and just scared everybody, which was great.
And it was funny because all the magazines you'd read and see would say, overnight sensation, Pantera. You know, we're like, we've been out slaving on the road for 4 hard years and 7 years in the nightclubs before that.
On the road promoting Far Beyond Driven in 1995, Philip Anselmo began distancing himself from the band.
He would just start freaking out about stuff, and nobody would know why. One night we were playing the sold-out show in Hamburg, and he didn't get the reaction that he wanted out of the crowd, and he just comes back there and says, "F*** y'all, I quit." You know, obviously he didn't quit, but this is when things started really going sideways, you know.
I can recall Daryl calling me and saying, "Look, man, I don't know what's going on with this dude, but..." You know, and of course everybody kind of thinks, well, you know, maybe it's the fame thing going to your head.
Anselmo attributes his erratic behavior to chronic back pain caused by years of violent on-stage performances.
It causes isolation. It causes your entire lifestyle to change. And at that point, Pantera was gigantic, and I had a job to do. Through pharmaceuticals or anything to get me up on that damn stage and desperately not feel that pain. I would drink an entire bottle of Wild Turkey before we went on to just be numb, which of course was affecting my performances and putting some worry into the band, you know?
But the band's separation anxiety would only deepen as their singer began treading a dangerous narcotic path. Next, Philip's dance with death.
This nurse leaned over and said to me, "Welcome back to life. You overdosed on heroin."
When Behind the Music continues. For more on Pantera, go to VH1.com, featuring artist bios, music downloads, and more.
Unlock the dusty vault of the... It's incredible to play a show like this in front of all you people!
By 1995, Pantera was the heaviest metal band in the world. Propelled by guitarist Dimebag Darrell's frenzied fretwork, the Texas outfit's bone-rattling brand of musical mayhem shook the senses of millions of delirious fans.
When you buy a Pantera, you're going to get bludgeoned, you know what I mean?
Pantera is about as metal gets, you know?
We were a machine. That's the way we operated. All the parts fit together, you know? When we played, when we did something like I mean, we all hammered it together.
But on stage, the Pantera machine was showing signs of malfunctioning. As the crowds grew larger, singer Philip Anselmo became increasingly unpredictable.
I want to see somebody take some initiative out there.
He wouldn't treat the fans with any respect, wouldn't treat us with any respect.
Quit thinking on the stupid noise.
Just you didn't want to be around him. He was a miserable person, you know?
I could get the ground to crack in half and have everybody dive into it. You know, yeah, I could tell people to take off all their clothes and have an orgy on the floor, and they would do it, you know?
Phil had a lot of opinions, and I would just listen to what he was saying, and I would say, oh, jeez.
I got a big mouth and a big so big choice.
Get the lawyers on the phone. There's going to be a riot. We're
Just as Pantera was scaling their greatest heights, Anselmo was hitting bottom. Burdened by agonizing back pain, the singer's erratic antics threatened to take down America's toughest band.
You never knew what Phil was going to get on stage. Some nights you'd get the Bulldog, and other nights you'd get the dude on 12 Somas or whatever he was on, and laying on his back screaming in the mic. You know, it was embarrassing.
He always complained about his back. We all told him all the time, get x-rays, go to the doctor, let's get it fixed so we can get on with this, and he never would.
They wanted to fuse the discs from the front, cut a piece of my hip out to use the actual bone as the cartilage part. And I was like, well, what's the recovery time on something like this? Oh, well, it's gonna be about a year and a half. I'm like, a year and a half? No way, man. I've got work to do.
To maintain Pantera's frantic pace, Philip dabbled with more dangerous solutions for his perpetual pain.
I was really turned on to heroin. I realized that it would numb me out so much that the pain was gone. And that's like putting a Band-Aid over cancer.
As the drugs dulled Philip's pain, he continued to isolate himself from the band. During the recording of 1996's The Great Southern Trendkill, Philip cut his vocals in New Orleans, while Dime, Rex, and Vinny laid down tracks in Texas.
He would do his vocals, and then I would bring him back to Texas after 2 weeks, and they would hear him. So there was more of a disconnect between the two. It was the only way we could work at that time.
I was unapproachable. My mind was not my own, and it was filled with discord, if anything.
It was just real uncomfortable, man. It was just what the fun was gone, you know? The unity that we once had wasn't there. At the time, I didn't know anything about heroin. I had no clue what it was.
On July 13th, 1996, an hour after a triumphant homecoming show at the Starplex in Dallas, Texas, Philip overdosed on heroin. His heart stopped beating for nearly 5 minutes.
Somebody comes running around the corner and says, "Phil's out." I saw him laying on the ground, blue, and people hitting on him and all this, and I was like, damn, dude had heat frustration. Said, "No, dude, he OD'd on heroin." I'm like, "Heroin? You gotta be kidding." "No way, not Phil Anselmo."
The paramedics get there and they put him back on the couch and give him a shot, I guess, of adrenaline and put the oxygen on him and pump his chest and revive him.
I didn't know what had happened, and had all these tubes hooked up to me, and I sat straight up and threw up immediately. This nurse leaned over and said to me, "Welcome back to life. You overdosed on heroin."
The following night, Philip apologized to his bandmates and crew, but Pantera would never be the same again.
I had never felt smaller in my entire life. I begged for their forgiveness, and I promised them and I swore to them that this would never happen again.
It was definitely a wake-up call for all of us. It's like something that's been obvious in front of your face for years and years, and you go, aha.
I thought I could do anything, and there wasn't a damn thing that could beat me. I was wrong. I was wrong.
Philip's ongoing struggle with heroin was slowly tearing Pantera apart.
The dude was on a steamroller to self-destruction. I don't think anybody could have helped him.
There's a different look in everybody's eye. That inch of doubt that was never there before. The lack of trust. You know, where you going, man?
When Phil was on, he was on. Daryl would have never taken that away from him or anything, but he was very embarrassed by him.
I relapsed maybe 2 more times, and I felt so guilty afterwards. I was like, why the hell? Why?
Philip's struggles turned Pantera into a powder keg. Even vivacious guitarist Dimebag Daryl began tiptoeing around the volatile vocalist.
He would even try to be low-key when walking into a room if Phil was there, on purpose. Like, he would kind of shadow his own personality just so that it didn't ruffle his feathers.
Dime and Vinny walked on eggshells for way too many years, waiting on that dude, waiting to see what that dude was gonna do, how he was gonna react to a certain situation.
The shell-shocked band didn't return to the recording studio for 4 years. While 2000's Reinventing the Steel was packed with Pantera's sledgehammer swagger, old tensions resurfaced on the road.
Daryl would make an effort to go over before the show to do a shot with him and go check on him after. He was pushing away all the people that really loved him and cared about him.
It was the same stuff, same song list, the same. Once again, the communication was so bad that no one would even go to Phil and talk about changing the set list before a tour started.
In late 2001, the band's tour was abruptly cut short by the tragedy of 9/11. They had no idea they had performed together for the last time. Next, a shocking murder in Columbus, Ohio.
It was like a real bad movie. None of it seemed real whatsoever. None of it.
When Behind the Music continues. After going full throttle for nearly 2 decades, Pantera hit the brakes in the fall of 2001. But vocalist Philip Anselmo wasn't ready to pull back. He quickly returned to the road with a side project called Down, joined by Pantera bassist Rex Brown.
The last thing that he told us when we finished Reinventing the Still tour was like, I'm going to go home and take a year off. My back's hurting. I'm done with it for a while. A month later, he's putting out the Down album and recording it.
He even said, I'm not trying to tour on it. In 6 months, you'll have your new Pantera record.
I mean, I could sit here and just keep going and going. Any free time I had, I would start something that would turn into something awesome.
Then he puts out Superjoint, goes out tours for that. Then he does another Down tour, and then another Superjoint record. Okay, this is not what he told us.
I mean, how long do we gotta wait around for this thing?
With Philip focused on pet projects Superjoint Ritual and Down, Pantera's short break turned into an extended vacation, and for nearly 2 years, the singer remained out of touch with Dime and Vinny.
You know, we couldn't communicate. Nobody would call us back.
We got everybody on the phone here, and we need to talk to Phil, and he would never come to the phone, ever. It was always sleeping in the shower, or there's a hurricane coming, he's got to board the windows up. I mean, give me a break.
Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? No way.
They weren't calling me. I don't care what anybody says. And I know that I am just as guilty for not communicating with them. It was every damn body else's fault as much as mine.
It was a bunch of he said, she said nonsense that was going on, and I didn't get in the middle of it. A lot of it was nothing but horror. So at a certain point, there's no going back. You know, absolutely none.
In 2003, with Anselmo AWOL, the Abbott brothers reluctantly abandoned the only band they ever knew.
We were sitting there rotting away. Two of the best musicians on the face of the earth that play that kind of music were sitting there and having to take it in the face. No future, no nothing, just sitting there wondering what the is happening.
You know, this is like these two kids who've basically built this family business from the ground up, and then all of a sudden, they can't run that business anymore.
The idle time sent Dimebag Darrell into a spiral of depression.
You know, he'd never been off that long, and that was probably the worst 2 years, I think, of his life.
He'd call me loaded or whatever. I just go, dude, what's going on? He's just like, I'm just bummed out, man. I go, well, Dime, look at it this way, man. Good Lord gave you a gift. He put it in your hands, man. I said, you're the best guitar player in the world. I said, just get out there and just, you know, get Vinny, get some ass-kicking musicians with you.
By late 2003, Dime and Vinny formed Damage Plan, releasing their debut album, Newfound Power, in early 2004.
It was weird for the fans. You know, they wanted Pantera. I mean, you've been serving people Coca-Cola for 200 years, and then all of a sudden you tell them we're changing the flavor and it's now going to be called Diet Right, you know?
Yet even after the brothers put Pantera behind them, Philip continued to serve up salvos in the press.
Thing that I said, and it ended up on the cover of the damn magazine.
I've got the audio tapes of Phil in that interview. He said what he said, word for word, in a very calm tone of voice, and he's got to live with that the rest of his life.
After he read that article, Darrell wrote a letter and said, you know, you're in competition with someone that's no longer in your life, you know? And I think the very last thing that it says in it is, no longer will you trample through my peaceful mind. It was for Philip. You know, he was done. He wrote him off. You know, he'd had enough of it.
Dimebag had made his peace with the perils of Pantera, but his contentment would be short-lived. On December 8, 2004, Damage Plan was wrapping up a 2-month club tour at the Alrosa Villa in Columbus, Ohio. But the gig would quickly turn tragic. 10 seconds into the set, 25-year-old ex-Marine Nathan Gale stormed the stage, brandishing a 9mm pistol.
I just screamed as loud as I could, and bam, bam, bam.
I just remember screaming, he's shooting something, and Vinny came off the drum riser, and he's coming at me, and he's going, he just shot my brother, he shot my brother.
I went to jump from behind the drums to run out and help. And John, Dom's guitar tech, tackled me and held me on the ground.
As soon as I knew he was pointing the other way, we both ran across the drum riser and got to the other side of the stage.
It kept going on, and he picked me up and shoved me and said, run, man.
911, what's your emergency?
This is Alrosa. We have a shooting.
911 emergency. Alrosa bar, please. We need help as soon as possible.
Oh, my God.
911.
He came in with a gun and started shooting people.
Oh, you're still shooting.
He's on stage right now. He's got a gun.
The guy's on stage with a gun?
My cell phone rang. It's Vinnie Paul. And he goes, dude, I just saw my brother get shot in the back of the head 5 times.
You. Cat was fighting with him, and he kept telling Cat to settle down, and he wouldn't.
And, kept shooting me. And just kept telling me, stay down, stay down. I'm looking out in the audience, I'm like, dude, somebody help me out here.
I thought he's killing my friend right in front of my face, you know, and I just screaming no, you know, but there was nothing I could do.
I can't really see what's going on. I'm just, you know, I'm like, quit shooting, quit, stop, please, stop shooting. You're killing all my friends, stop it. And he goes, shut up, bitch.
I looked over my shoulder and I heard the chaos, and I look, and there was an officer coming through the door.
And immediately I saw someone laying there that was bleeding. There was a small group of security guards standing there saying, he's there, he's there.
Columbus policeman James Niggemeyer was the first of 8 officers to arrive at the scene, just 3 minutes after receiving the dispatch call at 10:18 p.m.
I motioned for the officer over there, and I said, yeah, you gotta kill this guy. He's gonna kill more people. He's got my friend.
As I started working across the back of the stage, he then moved the gun to the hostage's head. And as soon as he put the gun to the hostage's head, I realized that I had to do something to try to save the hostage.
And then just all at once, he just took aim and he just leaned back real slow.
I watched him click the safety with his finger, and when he clicked the safety, I just plugged my ears and turned my head.
I stopped and pulled the trigger.
It was just like a cannon blast.
All of a sudden, the weight was off me, and I was like, somebody got him.
And it was over. It was over just like that.
I looked up, and he was down. The cat was moving, and at that point, I ran to the floor where they had Dime on the floor.
And Vinny kept calling me, and he still didn't know nothing. And then when he called me back and said, my brother's dead, and that's all he could say. And we both just cried.
It was like a real bad movie. None of it seemed real whatsoever. None of it. None of it. And that was that, man.
In the end, 5 were dead, including Dimebag Darrell. Cat Brooks suffered gunshot wounds to the chest, arm, and leg, but was released from the hospital within 3 days of the shooting. Gale's motive for killing remains unclear, but investigators believe he was despondent over the breakup of Pantera.
Never seen before.
The brutal onstage murder of 38-year-old guitarist Dimebag Darrell Abbott in December of 2004 sent shockwaves reverberating among everyone who knew him or were touched by his music.
Nothing like this has ever happened. Lennon, maybe. But Lennon wasn't shot and killed on stage. I mean, Dime was murdered on stage. It's just shocking.
I lost everything that night, you know. I just feel like somebody took a hacksaw and cut me right down the middle, took my right arm, my right leg, and my whole heart.
I would love it if 2 minutes from now he walked through that door. I still feel like he's going to. He did not deserve this.
Yet Dimebag's memorial service was anything but somber. It was the ultimate rock and roll send-off, right down to the Kiss casket in which the fallen guitarist was buried.
There's all these rock stars coming in. It just looks like Headbangers Ball. There's Eddie Van Halen up there talking at the funeral service. He puts his guitar in the casket with Darrell. It's the guitar off of Van Halen 2. You know, the black one with the yellow stripe. I mean, it's the guitar. And all I can think is that, you know, back in the early days when we're teenagers, if someone would have said, Darrell, when you die, Van Halen's going to put that guitar in the casket with you, Jerry would have said, kill me now.
Dime was in his Kiss coffin, and everyone's putting like bottles of Crown in there for him. There must have been about like 15 bottles of Crown Royal, and I go, you think this is going to be enough for the trip upstairs?
It was amazing, but, you know, it's like I told Rita and my dad, you know, after all this is over, we're going to be 3 of the most lonely people in the world.
A prodigious roster of hard rock royalty gathered in Arlington, Texas to remember Dimebag Darrell Abbott. But one prominent musician was conspicuously absent.
And I'd flown to Texas to be there and bury my brother. And I sat in a hotel room for 5 days, waiting, sending message after message to Vinnie Paul and anybody else who would even care to hear.
They stuck the phone in my face and said, Phil's on the phone, and if you don't take the phone, he's going to show up. I got on the phone, and I instantly just said, why are you calling now? And, of course, I started to cry. Why didn't you return the 9 phone calls when Darrell called you? I go, if you show up here, I'll blow your head off myself. And I hung up on him.
And I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral.
In the aftermath of his brother's death, Vinnie Paul Abbott has overseen Darrell's recorded legacy and started his own label, Big Vin Records.
I love playing music, and I want to do it again, but right now, I want to see what it's like being on the other side of the coin. If I come across the right situation or the right people, then I'll be back.
Philip Anselmo, who says he kicked heroin in 2002 and underwent back surgery in 2005, continues to focus on myriad musical projects.
You ready? I adore what I do. I live for what I do, and I'm still damn doing it. Yes, I've had to have probably the most major back surgery in the history of back surgery. And, you know, don't underestimate the kid. You're crazy if you do. And I am the kid.
But to this day, the bad blood between Philip and the Abbott clan continues to boil over.
I want him to live a real long, hard life in the shadow of Dime now, because he'll always be in his shadow. And that was the thing he seemed to fear the most of. Well, karma gets you, I guess.
Months after Dime's murder, Anselmo said he received a heated message from Vinnie Paul.
And the conversation went something to the effect that my day's coming. And my rebuttal is, Vince, all of our days coming, bro. And if my day happens to end earlier than your day, does that change anything? Will that change anything, or will you lose another brother? I'll be honest with you right now. I need Vinnie Paul real bad. I need him in my life. And whether he knows it or not, he needs me as well.
But the one thing everyone can agree on is the everlasting impact of Darrell Abbott's music and spirit.
He's just up at God's Tavern, you know, making cocktails for everybody, hanging out with Randy Rhoads and John Bonham and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, everybody.
Darrell Lance Abbott. In this house, will be revered and will be loved and celebrated for ever. You know? Period.
Everybody wanted Dom Tom. Now I got to have the most. So I feel fortunate.
He would take me in his arms, Dad.
So I feel fortunate.
He would take me in his arms, Dad, I love you. Yes, I love that. Sorry. That's what I remember the best. Underneath all that hard rock and roll exterior.
In critical condition. Police are seeking help with a hit-and-run case last night in Kalihi. It happened just after 10:30 near 888 North King Street. A vehicle hit a pedestrian, then left the scene. The victim was taken to Queens Medical Center in